Just when the world seemed to stop in 2020, Snack Magic was born, pivoting from a single city lunch service to a global gifting platform. Fast forward to 2022, and Snack Magic is your one-stop shop for all things custom gifting. We've delivered over 1 million gift boxes to over 130 countries, bringing smiles and a sense of unity to companies and teams across the globe. With the new landscape of hybrid and remote work, our services are helping companies deliver joy through snacks, swag, delicious dishes, and more. Whether your team is in person, virtual, or somewhere in between, Snack Magic makes sending global treats simple for teams of 5, 50, or 50,000 people. Ready to learn more? Our team is here to help take your gifting to the next level.
We are blessed by being in the very heart of the West End. We brought the West End into our building. And every part of our space has been curated and programmed to reflect West End life. Come into the Londoner and you'll experience the very best of London.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
It's really great to be with you today. It's honestly great to be in person, and it's great to see real faces in the audience. I can kind of see your faces, not exactly. But honestly, it's great to be collaborating too with colleagues on real solutions in a real space such as payments technology that I really think is a space where we need some new solutions. So today is going to be a mobile-friendly discussion. So please feel free to bring out your mobile devices. We are going to do a couple of polling questions, so make sure you're navigated to this session, and we'll go through those polls as we have our dialogue today. My name is Sarah Meyer. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for Onyx CenterSource for our M&E specific suite of products. And today I'm joined by Tony Wagner, Chief Commercial Officer with Onyx CenterSource and Managing Director of Financial Services and Consulting with Ernst & Young. I am a 20-year veteran of the meetings and events industry, and I have done everything from plan hands-on meetings to manage SMM environments to operationalizing really large, scalable solutions for our clients. And I'm excited to be developing new products for an industry that I love. Tony is also a 20-year veteran of the industry. He is an expert at propelling commercial growth and a master in really identifying the business drivers for our customers and aligning real solutions for them. Patty works with her clients to help them navigate the changing landscapes of the payments technology. She's an expert in optimizing solutions and various payment types and making choices with her clients to really bring customer satisfaction and realize company objectives. Prior to her time at E&Y, she was with American Express, where she helped clients optimize their procure-to-pay programs as well as their travel and meetings programs. Thank you guys both for being here today. We are here to really have a conversation and ideate on solutions for unraveling M&E payment challenges. And today we're going to share with you how payment technology is evolving and impacting M&E, what makes meetings and events payments unique and challenging, and pathways to creating payment optimized solutions for payment strategies. The goal really is to demystify or clarify and unravel the challenges surrounding payment solutions by sharing with you some trends we're seeing, outlining what may be coming in the future, and help shape what those solutions might look like. But before I jump in, I want to do a quick show of hands here. How many of you have been in the meeting and events industry for 20 or more years? Just show of hands. Great. I know. How many of you have been in the industry more than 10 years? So all those. And more than 5. Okay, great. So we have a wide variety of experiences that in the audience, which is great because we're going to look back here in just a moment on the history of payments and how this has evolved in the space of meetings and events. So, like I said, let's start by taking a look back. When you look at the history of payments, really it extends back to the very beginning of time, right? We've always been bartering. We've always been exchanging something of value for knowledge, for services, for goods, and that hasn't changed over the course of time. But in the last 20 to 30 years, we have seen a tremendous amount of change in technology and the offerings that payments provide. So around 1998, when we saw online payment solutions come in and e-commerce, that was followed up by the virtual credit cards. And then of course, when we had mobile devices and fintech solutions come in 2007, things like Apple Pay and Google Pay and Venmo and PayPal and Square and Stripe, and we could just start, listing all these offerings out there, really became commonplace to us, not only as consumers, but in the business space as well. And then of course, more recently, we've seen things like cryptocurrency and blockchain technology get introduced, which kind of has us all asking questions like, what is this? How does it work? What does it mean for me in meetings and events? And how can I apply that to solutions that actually bring some meaningful change into a space that's been, personally, in my experience, painful within meetings and events? And so I'm seeing some head bobs out there on the pain. And so that's what we want to talk about today and lay the groundwork. But in addition to how much change has occurred in the last, say, 20 or 30 years, it really is about the speed of adoption. So when electricity or telephones were introduced, you really saw 40, 50 years before 25% of the US population even adopted them. But smartphones now, in today's time, we're seeing technology be adopted at rapid speeds. So what does this mean? It means we have great opportunity, right? We see lots of evolving and new things coming into the market, but it doesn't take people a long time to adopt those things and businesses to adopt them. And so this is good news. It's good news because we can begin to unlock this opportunity to embrace that change, to understand it, and begin to apply it to success in meetings. So some of you may remember, some of you maybe raise your hands 20, 10 years, right? Maybe you remember when faxing floor plans and BEOs with all of your credit card information was like just commonplace, and that's what you did with your vendors. Or maybe you carried a backpack around that was large enough to hold all those binders that you had with all of your orders and your master events and your payment schedules and when you need to pay them and how you needed to pay them, and that's just how we managed our information. And maybe you remember when registering for an event meant calling somebody on the phone or getting their information in the mail with a check or having to manually input that data from one place to another. Or maybe you remember a process for obtaining petty cash and taking it with you to an event and handing out petty cash. Or maybe you had to cut checks in advance. Say it again?
I'll take some petty cash.
Petty cash, right? Sure, here you go. Checks that you had to take with you on advance to pay your suppliers. And all of that had to be coordinated. And there was just a lot of effort and energy and struggle. And if you showed up and you didn't have it, sometimes things were delayed. But today, right, fast forward, some of you might be saying, well, hey, I still do that. You might, but we also have the introduction of mobile apps for things like expense and receipts management. We also have very commonplace online registration with payment gateways and ways that we can process those payments. We also have the ability to really see in the last 2 to 3 years with COVID, the contactless payments that have come into place on site. So I think that we can say within the meeting and event industry that this technology has improved what we're doing and we are evolving, but there is still some things that we are kind of lost in the past, right? But you don't have to take it to me. So what I want you to do is to go ahead, take out those mobile devices. Let's do a quick poll and get your thoughts on kind of how you would rate your satisfaction. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your satisfaction with the process and tools you use today to manage and reconcile your meeting and events payments? 1 is going to be nothing works and I absolutely hate it. Or 2, everything's perfect, please don't
10.
talk to me again.
10.
I would not change a thing.
10, not 2.
Oh, 2, 10, thank you. 10, 10 means everything is perfect. I would not change a thing. All right, you're gonna have to, what am I saying? All right, seeing it come up. I can't see the numbers, Denise, at the bottom, is it?
You're over there on the right.
E and F. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're kind of in the middle here on, we think it's doing okay, but we have room for improvement. Do we have anybody at 10? Everything's perfect. No, okay.
Goodness.
So we all have room for improvement here on what we can do and what tools that we're using. Thank you. So let's build on this. Tony, Patty, what trends, let's start with you, Tony. What trends are you seeing emerge today in the payments and payments technology space?
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing more and more is because in our consumer lives, we're doing more P2P payments, person to person. People are expecting more virtual payments, right? I don't take cash anywhere. The only reason I have cash is because my 8-year-old son likes to count his money all the time and he wants to change it. Like, that's the only reason I have it, right? But that's really the expectation, right? Is that you're going to have more of those virtual accounts to now work in the business environment. And we're seeing customers ask about that. In addition, I think what you're seeing is people are starting to try to tackle what is a manual process, right? They're maybe stumped a little bit how to do it in this industry. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. But we think there's going to be more B2B optimization of the payment processes. That's what we're hearing as we're talking to suppliers. And then one other trend that we're seeing now, and it's really kind of driven by the conflict in Eastern Europe, is there's a need to know who you're paying, right? There's a diligence for that, know your customer. We call it KYC. That level of due diligence is more and more important, not just because it's good business practice, because the government requires us to do it as a payments company.
Absolutely. What about you, Patty?
Well, I agree with everything that Tony said. I think, I've always talked about the consumerization of technology, and, it seems that companies tend to, take a more conservative approach, but the idea of, and I think you might have even spoken about it, Sarah, just touchless payments, right? And really expecting things, I think about, my Uber ride, right? It's really funny. Last night I almost left out of the taxi without paying because I forgot I wasn't in an Uber.
Right.
But it's like you just don't think about paying anymore, right? It's just something that happens, and there's all the processes that go with it. If I have a problem with that payment, I have a process in which to rectify that. So I really think that's another area, is just that digitization and having it move over. And I know we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the benefits that you get when you start to have more things, less paper, more digital.
Would you also agree that mobilization is and the expansion and the empowerment of that is a trend that you're seeing in payments as well?
So when you say mobilization, like mobility?
Like going mobile with like a
mobility.
device.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, absolutely. And it's really interesting because you mentioned I used to work for Amex. Like, to me, I think travel and meetings and events when you're on the move is like the best use case for mobility, but I feel like it's taken a long time to get there. And it doesn't mean that there aren't fintechs trying to do it, but like thinking about that end-to-end journey of the whole process, and I think that definitely applies to the meeting and event space. But yes, mobility, for a long time though, the issue with mobility was, how do I secure that data, your data, in the phone, right? Because typically the payments company doesn't own the phone, right? It's, especially if you look at like Apple, they lock down their phones. So how do I ensure that the data that's sitting in your phone is protected and only accessed by those that need to get to it? But there's been a lot of advancements there, and I think now, and then phones got super big for a while, right? They became your laptop or your tablet, and now it looks like they're shrinking again. But I think nowadays people spend more time on their phone than they do on their computer.
Great. Well, there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of trends, as you all mentioned, and that are coming into the space. And the question is, what do we do with those and how do we move those forward? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Before we get to that point, I want to take another poll. So if you have your devices out, let's talk a little bit about what's challenging sometimes about implementing new things, or perhaps it's going well for you. What barrier listed creates the greatest obstacle for you to adoption of new payment solutions for your meetings? 1, there's simply not enough resources for you to take on any new changes. 2, your finance partners and leaders do not understand those requirements and are hesitant to introduce something new. Or 3, you lack understanding on what the possible solutions are and the value and ROI they could bring. Or 4, the solutions you've seen to date really don't provide the automation, visibility, scalability, speed, or ease that you would need. Or if there's not one here that's a challenge for you or a barrier, then certainly other is what we'd be looking for. Okay. Wow. So there's a lot of, it seems to be there's an understanding of what the possibilities are, some obstacles that you face with partners internally under those unique requirements for M&E. Absolutely. Some, there are simply not enough resources. That is a real challenge. We completely understand that today in our environment, both with hotels and agencies and corporations alike. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Denise. So let's build upon that. You know, there definitely are some unique challenges that M&E faces with payments, and some of them are shown here on the slide. But Tony, from your perspective, what unique needs are there within M&E when it comes to payments processing, and how do leaders really apply these new solutions given some of the factors and barriers that they face?
You know, I think as someone that, you know, has a background in meetings and events for a long time, the biggest issue with, I think, this payments piece is that many things are manual. Right, you look at the top one up there, large volumes of vendors that you may only use 1 or 2 times. I'd be on a business trip, right? I'd have to approve a vendor to get loaded into the system of the agency that I worked on, right? That's painful, right? People don't enjoy doing that. One solution, credit card, right? You can do that. But it doesn't really get into this vetting of, from a KYC standpoint, of what you need to do. And so I think, first of all, when you think about this great conference we're talking about here today, right, they're talking about the product evolution. What's the one thing that's been historically missing in this whole process of meeting and event planning? Payments, right? You source a contract, you contract that contract, you make a deposit. What do? You don't use any of the system technology today. So one of the things we're trying to do is engage in that conversation with Cvent. You heard a little bit about it this week. But how you can embed this into that process flow, I think, is one of those opportunities, Sarah, right? Yeah. If I was a meeting planner, wouldn't want to be handing cash out anymore. I'd want either Venmo, right, or using some sort of app, right, to give a tip to that person that did a fabulous job on my program. And so I think that's part one. I think part two of challenges is because it's manual today, and because hasn't been an agency I haven't talked to this week that says demand is crazily up, we can't find people, we have 35 open roles, right? If you're a large agency that you're trying to fill, it gets in this mode of what's right in front of your face, keeping up with demand, pleasing the customer. It's not thinking 6 to 12, 9 months down the road when an agency may need that commission, right, to fund their venue sourcing operations, or a customer might be counting on that to offset their budget, right, for what they're doing. They're not thinking that far ahead. And if there's ever a time to think about automation, it's today, right? So I think the industry has to think about how do we assist third parties in this, making the process simpler, at the same time integrating into the overall process so you don't have to worry about onboarding suppliers. You don't have to remember to put an Outlook calendar request on there to make a deposit for a payment, and just make it easy, right? So I think that's the solution, right? The challenge is going to be how do we help a strained industry right now recover in a way that helps them do things faster, more efficiently, and get those payments in the door faster.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking about the poll that was just taken, and the fact that, you know, finance partners or leaders maybe don't understand those factors. And I think one of the solutions, one of the ways, right, is that education. It's about understanding these unique factors and creating a way to kind of get in front of that group and outline how these factors really do impact the payments and leverage those relationships and influence, because sometimes those leaders don't know that these are unique factors for M&E, and they're looking to all of you in the audience as the experts in that space to share that with them, to help them understand that. And so I would just add to what you said on, you know, that type of education and partners who can help provide that insights, I do think would be helpful to overcoming the obstacle that you shared was a challenge in the room.
We're like 2 minutes ahead of time, so I'm going to give a story. Sarah doesn't know this, right? But Sarah and I were on a conversation with a potential partner of ours, right? Potential customer. And so we did a workshop with them. First, we did one with finance and shared services, which was number 2, right, on the list of maybe barriers or challenges. And on the other side was the operating team. And so we asked them the same questions. Question 1, you know, how's your process working today? Finance. Awesome. Love it, right? No problems whatsoever. We collect 100% of our commissions. Our payments go out easy. We have a system, right? You talk to the operational team and they say, it's the worst part of our job. We maybe are collecting 85% of our commissions every time we have to onboard a new vendor. It requires X amount of time. We don't have time to do that today because demand is too high.
Yeah.
And so that's the dilemma, right? How do we as an organization, as Onyx, right, or as the industry overall, or each of you in the audience, make the case, right? The time to invest is when you don't have to then go out and hire people to do more of this work that's non-productive. The time's to really engage and hire people to be customer-facing.
Right.
Right? So that's the dilemma, and I think there are solutions out there, and that's what we want to talk to people about.
Right. And the technology is there. You know, Reggie's talked about this too. He said, you know, the time is now, and but the technology is there. The capabilities and payments are there. We talked about the trends. The trends are possible solutions, and it's about understanding these factors and applying those solutions in. So let's talk about the future. What do we go to, not only with current, but what are we seeing in the future? What are those things that we should anticipate as we're strategizing on what solutions should be? So Patty, what do you see coming in the future as a payments expert, and how do you see this driving positive solutions specifically to M&E to overcome some of the challenges that we face?
Yep. And so I'm going to bucket them into 3 groups. And, you know, some of these you might say, well, you know, that exists today, and maybe it exists today, but it doesn't exist in this space. So the 3 buckets that we look at, I think the first one we mentioned a little earlier was really around digitization, right? And thinking about it from the experience perspective as well. So you talk about having wallets, you talk about, you know, an easier checkout experience. You know, the other thing I would say, and it's probably been said many times, you know, COVID really forced people that didn't like, you know, technology, that were more comfortable with paper or going to a store, to really have to convert. And I think we've seen an acceleration for the number of, you know, electronic transactions that happen with that. And the thing about it that's really good is when you start digitizing things, right, and now that it's no longer manual, well, now in some cases you can automate some of the tasks in that transaction, or you can put in better controls or have better visibility through reporting, because now you've got more of that information in one place, and it's not somebody's spreadsheet per se. So I think it kind of all goes together, and I think you mentioned also the idea of virtual payments and having the ability to you know, give someone a payment credential that's one time, it's, you know, set, you know, can only be used for certain types of expenditures, and it really goes a long way for reporting. The other thing that I would say is, and especially because I kind of look at payment trends globally, and if you look at what's happening outside of the US, there's a lot more governmental involvement, to put it that way. And, you know, we have something in Europe called open banking, and what does that mean? It means, you know, the regulators there really just wanted not those big banks to have access to customers and offer them services and payments and the like. And really what that's allowed for is to have more people in the ecosystem. And when I think about meeting and events, it really is an ecosystem of partners. It takes a village to put on a really good meeting. And so if you start digitizing that ecosystem and you've got access through APIs, a little technical, right, and access to payment credentials, then you can start sharing things. And when you create that ecosystem, then you can say, okay, what are the needs for each of the players in the ecosystem, and then how can we help each other? And, you know, that's where we're seeing this even just outside of meeting and events. Usually any sort of ecosystem, you know, maybe someone's got a cash flow problem and someone will step in and offer them financing, and it kind of works together. And the thing that I would throw on top of that is, especially when you go outside of the US, is I think a lot of vendors, you know, they work on low margin, or they, you know, every penny counts. My husband's a small business, and, you know, taking a credit card's expensive. Nowadays, with this idea of these open banking and these payment credentials, now you're starting to see even companies like Stripe, which typically only accepted, would enable you to accept payment credit cards. Now you can accept an ACH payment, which is like a bank account, for a much lower fee. I still think it's too high, but it's much lower.
But I think there's pressure on those fees too.
Yes,
right?
there is
virtual
totally.
payments are coming through.
That's right.
And the value, sorry to interrupt, and the value is that speed to payment, right? I mean, we all want our commissions payments faster if you're an agency. We all want to get our receivables off of our books. Like the movement of money is just the expectation is real time. And so leveraging exactly what you're saying is now and into the future of that more real time payment processing could really have an impact within the M&E space, and especially with cash flow being such a major focus area of the business.
Right.
So sorry to interrupt you.
Right, and I'm happy you said real-time payments, because that's actually a thing. And it is sort of the faster pay of like an ACH or bank payment that's now being rolled out within the US. And so think about it like a Zelle payment or a Venmo payment, but actually through the banking system. And that's coming, and that gives you visibility. And then the thing that I would throw on top, which I get questions all the time about crypto, digital currencies. Like there's a lot of that out there. It's primarily been an investment vehicle. There's pockets now of, accepting it as a payment. But really the thing that excites me is the technology when you talk about blockchain and smart contracts, which really power a lot of those digital currencies. And I think those technologies could really help when you're thinking about an ecosystem. If everybody has a shared view of what's happening, then you can actually use what they call smart contract, which is really business logic, to say, okay, if this event happens, right? If Joe stays in your hotel, this is the payment you get. And everybody, it takes away a lot of the reconciliation. Are we there yet? No. The big thing about it is the technology's there, but again, you have to get everybody onto that ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you. I know we're kind of coming up on time, and I want to kind of wrap up and make sure there's kind of some key takeaways, some things that you leave with and from our discussion today. One is that payment tech is rapidly evolving. We talked about how quickly that's happening, but the opportunities are great. So understanding and recognizing those trends and the advantage they bring is a key to continuing to build on the success of your meetings and your business. Two, meetings and events has unique requirements in that payment space. And trying to apply solutions without factoring this in is definitely going to add to the barriers that you face. So that is, when we think about what Onyx is doing, and in my experience, stepping away from a large meetings agency, in my experience in the agency space, and coming into a payments and fintech space and talking with payments experts, I am re-energized by this idea that there are solutions out there that I don't know that the meetings community is fully aware of, and the capabilities that are out there. And so partnering with those payment experts and bringing that together, there is tremendous opportunity. And I would not say that if I didn't believe it, because I've felt the pain over the last decade of how challenging this can be. And now that I see those opportunities with what we're building within Onyx and with partners like E&Y, it is worth the conversation, absolutely. But don't underestimate the uniqueness of M&E. It's important to continue to move that forward with your leaders, especially if that's a barrier for you. And three, new solutions are possible, and they're absolutely necessary. And when I say new solutions, I mean new ones, not just better of the same thing. We have, like I said, we've seen solutions that have been in place, and we've used them and tried them and looked them in different angles, and we're still challenged. And so we need to look at these new solutions, and we need to activate them. We need to be partnering strategically and be intentional about what those solutions look like. I think you would all agree that today it's about connectedness and collaboration. We get more done when that is happening, and we're here to collaborate, we're here to connect, and we want all of you to be part of that conversation with us at Onyx as we build solutions that will better your business and better your meetings, and we can help you do that, and we're excited about the opportunity to do that. We absolutely know that there's potential to grow and that those solutions can be implemented in a meaningful way.
And so I have one thing, right? When you think about why we're here today, it is, as Sarah said, collaboration. We're blessed at Onyx because we have great relationships in the hotel and hospitality space, right? 7 of the top 11 hotel chains call us a partner of theirs, right? We have all the major global TMCs in the world, right? And now we're working with Cvent to try to reimagine this process. Cvent's talked a little bit about this concept of Cvent invoice in the vendor marketplace. How can we enable payments within that solution, right? But Sarah and I have a perspective. You all have different perspectives. So take the time and give some input, right? Reach out to us tomorrow at the trade show. Come up here and chat with us afterwards. There is no one right answer, right? There's a community-oriented, grassroots approach on how we can make this better overall, leveraging the tools that are out there. So,
Absolutely.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Happy hour's not far away. Just know that, right? I think it's 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something like that. So, thanks again.
Thank you.